The sun had barely risen over the village, casting long golden streaks across the river that wound like a silver ribbon through the heart of the land. The air was thick with the songs of birds and the whisper of leaves, as though the forests themselves were murmuring secrets of the past. Every hut, every path, every worn footbridge was alive with the rhythm of life, yet nothing escaped the watchful eyes of the villagers. Here, even the softest whisper traveled fast. Gossip traveled swifter than the river's current, carrying praise, envy, and fear alike. Kofi moved slowly along the narrow dirt path, his wooden staff tapping softly against the earth. Once, he had been the pride of the village, a man whose hands could till the soil, whose laughter could fill the air like the beating of drums. But the accident had changed him. Now, the strength in his legs had gone, replaced by a quiet dignity and a humility that many did not understand. Yet those who looked deeper saw wisdom etched in the lines of his face and a calm that spoke of a soul unbroken. Amma appeared at the edge of the compound, her finely embroidered cloth glinting in the morning sun. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, swept over Kofi with a mixture of contempt and calculation. She had never forgiven him for the accident, never forgiven the world for forcing him into weakness while she remained beautiful, young, and ambitious. "Why must you linger there like a shadow, Kofi?" she called, her voice both sweet and cruel. "Do you think the villagers will remember you with those useless legs of yours?" Her words cut through the morning calm, and her laughter echoed like a warning bell. The neighbors' eyes flicked toward the house, some shaking their heads, others whispering. Esi watched silently from the doorway, her small hands clasped nervously. She was only 17, yet there was a gravity in her gaze that belied her youth. She had known Kofi since he was a boy, and she had seen the accident steal more than his strength. It had stolen the warmth of recognition from those around him. Now, as Amma mocked him, Esi felt the familiar tight knot of unease in her chest. She wanted to intervene, to scold Amma for her cruelty, yet she knew her place. Still, she vowed silently to protect Kofi's dignity however she could. The village elders sat across the path under the old baobab, their faces carved with wisdom and years of observing human folly. Their eyes, sharp and discerning, followed every movement in Kofi and Amma's yard. One elder leaned on his staff and whispered, "Pride clouds the mind. Those who humiliate without reason invite the wrath of the spirits." Neighbors lingered nearby, peering from behind fences and walls, nodding quietly. The elders' murmurs were not just words, they were a warning, a reminder that every action had a consequence and that justice, though slow, always found its way. Kofi lowered his gaze, not out of shame, but in quiet contemplation. He breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of the river, the hum of the forest, and the weight of the elders' gaze. Around him, the village lived, breathed, and watched, each villager a witness to the unfolding story. And though his legs had failed him, his spirit remained unbroken, quietly gathering strength for the trials that lay ahead. The sun had barely reached its zenith when Amma decided the time was right to gather a few neighbors and relatives. Her compound gleamed with freshly swept floors, polished wooden stools, and clay pots filled with steaming food, each arranged with deliberate care. She wore her finest cloth, a brilliant red embroidered with gold, and moved as if the sun itself followed her commands. "Bring him here," she called sharply, pointing at Kofi, who leaned on his walking stick at the edge of the yard. His face remained calm, but his hands gripped the staff tighter, knuckles whitening. "Kofi, serve the guests. Make sure the rice is hot and the yams are soft." Kofi obeyed silently, the movement slow but steady. Villagers who had wandered in to see the gathering whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads at Amma's harshness, while others kept their distance, afraid to speak. Amma's laughter rang through the yard, sharp and cruel. "You see, everyone," she said, eyes flashing with malice. "This is the man I married, once strong, now unable to do the simplest tasks without trembling. He is no longer a man, only a shadow in his own home." Esi stood behind the doorframe, her hands pressed to her chest. Her heart ached at every word, every jab that Amma threw. She wanted to speak, to defend Kofi, but fear held her tongue. The young girl's eyes darted between Kofi's bowed head and Amma's triumphant stance. She felt the weight of injustice pressing down, heavy as the midday sun. "Master Kofi," she whispered softly to herself, "one day they will see the truth. One day justice will find her." The villagers outside the compound began murmuring. "She is too proud. an old woman whispered. "The ancestors do not favor those who mock the weak." Another man shook his head. "Pride before the spirits always brings downfall," he muttered under his breath. Even as they hid their faces behind palm fronds and walls, the air trembled with the knowledge that the household's cruelty could not go unseen. Amma, noticing nothing, continued her relentless taunting. "Go sweep the veranda again, Kofi. Don't let the dust dishonor my guests." Kofi moved slowly, his back straight despite the effort. His eyes focused not on her insults, but on the rhythm of the village around him, the rustle of leaves, the murmurs of neighbors, the quiet judgment of elders who had once guided his father. Esi moved closer to him, bringing a small bowl of water to cool the sweat on his brow. "Please, Master Kofi," she whispered, "take a breath." Kofi nodded slightly, his calm acceptance a quiet rebuke to Amma's cruelty. The contrast was stark, his patience and dignity against her vanity and arrogance. Throughout the morning, Amma forced him from task to task, each chore designed to display his weakness before the eyes of their community. He carried pots of water, swept the courtyard, and arranged plates, all under Amma's harsh gaze. Each movement, each effort, was a silent testament to his strength of character, even as his body faltered. By the time the guests had left, murmurs had grown into whispers of caution and judgment. The elders would talk later, the village storytellers would remember, and the winds carried the lesson of the day beyond the compound. Arrogance and cruelty may shine brightly for a moment, but the eyes of the community, and the ancestors, see all. Kofi sat by the river that evening, his wooden staff leaning against his shoulder. Esi knelt beside him, her young hands clutching the hem of her cloth. "Do not fear, Master Kofi," she said softly. "Even the strongest pride will bow when the time comes. You have the patience of the river, and the heart of the ancestors guides you." Kofi smiled faintly, looking at the flowing water. "Patience, Esi. Let the river carry the anger and the dust settle. Truth does not need to shout. It waits, as it always does." Amma stepped out of the compound, her red and gold cloth catching the sunlight as if the sun itself had chosen to shine upon her. Her hair was braided intricately, adorned with small beads that clicked softly as she moved, and her feet were wrapped in fine leather sandals that whispered wealth with each step. She smiled at her reflection in the river's edge, as though the world existed only to admire her beauty and social stature. "See how they look at me, Kofi," she said sharply, turning toward him. "Do they not know that it is I who make this house the envy of the village?" Her tone dripped with pride, and her words were a blade cutting through the quiet dignity of the man beside her. Kofi lowered his gaze, letting her vanity roll over him like the wind through the forest leaves. He said nothing, though the villagers' eyes followed them wherever they went. Some whispered among themselves. "She is proud," one woman murmured. "Too proud for her own good." Another man nodded. "Pride blinds, and the ancestors do not favor those who step on the humble." As Amma flaunted her beauty, waving her hands gracefully at neighbors and offering gifts with an air of superiority, Kofi felt the weight of her arrogance pressing down. Yet, rather than anger, a quiet resolve stirred within him. That evening, he walked slowly to the edge of the dense forest that bordered the village, the place where the old spirits whispered to those who listened. The trees stood tall and solemn, their roots tangled like the threads of destiny, and the river nearby shimmered with ancestral light. Kofi leaned on his staff, closing his eyes. "Ancestors of my fathers," he murmured softly, "guide my heart and mind. Teach me patience. Teach me wisdom." Birds stirred in the treetops, their calls sharp yet melodic, as though the forest itself acknowledged his plea. A cool wind swept through the leaves, rustling like soft voices speaking secrets of justice and fate. As he walked deeper among the trees, Kofi contemplated how to reclaim his dignity. He would not raise his voice or lash out in anger. That was not the way of his people. Instead, he devised a plan of quiet endurance, subtle action, and moral courage, each step guided by patience. He would show the village that strength was not measured by the body but by the heart, the mind, and the spirit. Meanwhile, Esi moved through the household with quiet care. She brought Kofi bowls of warm food, adjusted his blankets, and swept the courtyard without drawing Amma's attention. "Eat, Master Kofi," she whispered one evening, setting a bowl of rice before him. "The sun will rise again, and those who speak cruelty will stumble on their own pride." At times, she discreetly spoke to villagers, hinting at Amma's arrogance and the strain she placed on Kofi, all while protecting his honor. Her actions were subtle, like a stream carving its path through stone, quiet yet persistent. One evening, as Kofi rested beneath the shade of a mango tree, Esi sat beside him, lowering her voice. "Master Kofi, the elders speak of patience and truth. I see your heart, and I will help you hold it safe. Let them show themselves in their own time." Kofi looked at her, a faint smile forming despite the weight of his burdens. "Esi," he said softly, "it is not enough to survive cruelty. One must endure it with dignity and let the spirits of justice walk beside us. Your courage gives me strength." In the quiet of the household, amid whispered tasks and gentle care, Esi became more than a maid. She became a moral compass, guiding with quiet wisdom, reminding that righteousness often flourishes in silence, unnoticed yet unwavering. And in that subtle unspoken partnership, a seed of hope and eventual justice took root, ready to bloom when the time was right. The village was alive with whispers, soft voices carried on the wind like the rustle of the forest leaves. Mothers passing by the river market shook their heads quietly. "Have you seen Amma today?" one murmured. "Her pride grows larger than the baobab." Children listened, wide-eyed, sensing the sharp edge in the villagers' murmurs. "And Kofi," another whispered, "he endures with such patience, yet she spares no cruelty." Around the fire that evening, the storytellers gathered, their voices low but heavy with meaning. "Remember, my children," the eldest said, tapping his walking stick against the ground, "pride before the ancestors brings downfall. The spirits watch, and no arrogance goes unseen." The villagers nodded, their murmurs blending with the crackling fire, a subtle warning threading through the night. The elders watched from the shade of the ancient baobab, their faces carved by time and wisdom. One leaned forward, eyes sharp beneath the heavy brows. "She forgets herself," he murmured to another. "And he remains patient. The ancestors favor the humble." Their subtle gestures, a shake of the head, a soft sigh, spoke louder than words. Everyone in the village knew that the elders' silent judgment was not mere observation. It was a moral reckoning, a reminder that no one escaped accountability in their tightly bound community. The river nearby shimmered with the evening light, and the forest whispered secrets of fate. Kofi sat at its edge, his staff beside him, his eyes reflecting the rippling water. To the villagers, his body seemed weak, but in the stillness of the river's reflection and the rustling of leaves, it was clear he carried something stronger than flesh: patience, insight, and the quiet power of the spirit's favor. Amma, by contrast, flaunted her wealth in every step she took, beads jingling and cloth shimmering, oblivious to the growing tension in the village air. Day by day, Amma's taunts and displays of vanity became sharper. She ordered Kofi to sweep the veranda, to carry bowls of food, to attend to guests who gossiped and smiled at her flamboyance. Kofi moved slowly, silently, never raising his voice, his calm eyes meeting those of the villagers who dared to look. Some lowered their gaze, some whispered among themselves, and all felt the quiet power of patience standing against arrogance. It was a battle not of strength, but of spirit, and the village watched, knowing the scales of fate were tipping. Then came the day of the lavish feast. The courtyard glittered with polished wood, golden pots, and colorful fabrics. Drums beat a rhythmic welcome, children clapped, and the aroma of roasted yams and spicy stews filled the air. Amma moved among the guests, laughing, twirling, showing her wealth with pride, as if the world existed to honor her alone. Kofi, leaning on his staff, carried plates with care, never stumbling, never speaking back, his face calm and steady amid the chaos. "Serve this one, Kofi," Amma called, pointing to a neighbor with a smirk. "Make sure it is perfect. We cannot have the village thinking my husband is lazy or weak." Kofi obeyed without complaint, each movement deliberate, a quiet assertion of dignity that contrasted sharply with her flamboyant cruelty. The villagers could not help but notice. Some whispered of Amma's arrogance, others of Kofi's unwavering patience. The elder's silent gaze rested upon them both, like a heavy mantle of judgment. In every glance, every gesture, the message was clear. Pride may dazzle, but the spirits favor virtue, and humility carries a strength that even wealth and beauty cannot match. As the drums echoed into the night, and the feast continued under the shimmering lanterns, the stage was set. The contrast between Amma's hubris and Kofi's quiet dignity could not be ignored. Everyone watching sensed it, the tension in the air, the weight of fate pressing softly but surely toward the moment when justice would reveal itself. Kofi moved among the guests with careful steps, his staff steady in hand. Each bowl he carried, each plate he arranged, was done with quiet precision. Amma's laughter rang above the chatter, sharp and glittering, yet Kofi's calm presence drew the attention of the villagers. They noticed the contrast immediately, the gleaming pride of the mistress and the serene dignity of her husband. "See how he serves, despite his weakness," whispered one woman. "He bears it all with patience. Such strength lies in the heart, not in the body." Esi, standing near the edge of the gathering, watched Amma's antics with a tightening chest. She glanced at the elders seated beneath the baobab tree, their eyes keen and knowing. Quietly, she moved through the crowd, speaking softly to them in whispers they could understand without others noticing. "Master Kofi suffers under Amma's cruelty," she said carefully. "She commands and insults him before the villagers, leaving him humiliated. The household is mismanaged, and your guidance is needed before greater harm comes." The elders nodded slightly, exchanging glances rich with the weight of experience. Their lips pressed together, eyes following every movement. They spoke little, yet their silent judgment carried a force the villagers could feel in the air. A deep tension hummed beneath the drums, under the clinking of glasses, and in the rustling leaves of the courtyard trees. Outside, subtle signs began to stir. A sudden gust of wind rattled the lanterns, sending shadows leaping across the walls. A floorboard creaked loudly under Amma's heels as she pranced across the balcony. A small goat, startled by her laughter, tripped and bolted toward the guests. Whispers of unease traveled from group to group, eyes darting nervously as the natural world seemed to reflect the imbalance within the house. Amma, oblivious to the mounting tension, raised her voice in triumph. "Look at me!" she cried, spinning to display her finest beads and golden bangles. "Is there anyone in this village who rivals my beauty and wealth?" And then it happened. A sharp crack echoed through the courtyard. A balcony beam gave way under Amma's weight. She stumbled, arms flailing, sending a tray of bowls clattering to the ground. Guests gasped as she teetered, finally landing on the cool stone below with a thud that silenced the music and chatter. A bruise formed along her arm, and her beads scattered across the floor like fallen stars. The villagers froze, eyes wide. Whispers rose instantly. "The spirits do not favor the proud," one elder muttered. Another shook her head solemnly. "Pride before the ancestors brings downfall." Children clung to their mothers, sensing the gravity of the moment. Kofi, still calm, approached her gently, offering his hand. "Rise, Amma," he said softly. "Let humility guide you. The spirits watch, and justice is never far." His voice carried neither anger nor triumph, only a steady wisdom that made the room fall into a hush. Esi stepped forward as well, helping to pick up the scattered beads. "The villagers have seen today, Master Kofi," she murmured. "They understand the balance of right and wrong." Amma, her pride shattered along with the tray, looked around at the witnesses of her humiliation. Her golden jewelry now lay in disarray, and for the first time, she felt the weight of the consequences she had ignored for so long. The elders' silent nods, the villagers' murmurs, and the forest breeze through the courtyard all reminded her, arrogance and cruelty do not escape the eyes of fate. Kofi extended his hand to Amma, steady and calm, his eyes soft yet unwavering. "Rise, Amma," he said gently, helping her to her feet. "Let this be a lesson, not only to you but to all who watch. The spirits favor those who endure with patience and act with humility." Amma's face burned with embarrassment, her beads tangled and her dress dusty from the fall. She trembled, unable to meet the eyes of the villagers who now surrounded them, murmuring softly about the justice they had just witnessed. Kofi's composure shone brighter than any gold she had adorned herself with that day. The elders stepped forward, their long staffs tapping lightly against the stone courtyard. "Master Kofi," one said, voice rich with authority, "you have shown the strength of heart and the wisdom of patience. Your humility has guided you, even when tested by cruelty. Let all remember that virtue stands taller than pride." The villagers murmured their agreement, some bowing their heads, others whispering in admiration. "He carries suffering with dignity," said a woman near the riverbank. "What he endures, we must honor." Children repeated the words softly, as though learning a sacred lesson, and the elders nodded approvingly. Amma, her voice shaking, finally spoke. I have wronged you, Kofi. My pride and my cruelty have caused shame. The words were heavy, forced by the weight of the villagers' gazes and the silent authority of the elders. Kofi smiled faintly, his forgiveness gentle but firm. Acknowledgement is the first step toward change, he replied. Let us all learn and grow from what has passed. Esi stepped forward, gathering the scattered beads from the courtyard and helping Amma adjust her dress. Master Kofi, your strength shows us the value of patience and integrity, she said softly. And for you, Amma, let this day remind you that the heart must guide actions, not arrogance. In the days that followed, the village honored Kofi quietly. Stories of his grace, patience, and moral courage spread from the riverbank to the forests, carried in whispers and songs by the villagers and children. Esi's loyalty was also remembered, her courage to speak truth delicately yet firmly praised by all. The community felt the balance of justice restored, as if the ancestors themselves had breathed approval through the trees and river winds. Alone near the river, Amma watched the water flow, calm and reflective. She shivered as the forest around her seemed to whisper, reminding her of her pride and the fall it had brought. Fear and regret mingled with shame, stirring a faint but growing desire to change. Each ripple of the river mirrored her heart, troubled yet slowly clearing. For the first time, she saw that wealth and beauty could not replace humility and virtue. The elders guided her gently, reminding her of the lessons of their ancestors. Pride can be tempered, child, one said kindly. It is never too late to walk in virtue, to honor those who have suffered, and to learn the ways of righteousness. Kofi watched silently, offering no words of reproach, only his example of patience and forgiveness. Amma began performing small acts of kindness, helping the elderly carry water, tending to the sick, and bowing her head in respect before the elders. Slowly, her heart opened to the lessons she had once scorned, and the village began to see the first steps of her redemption. The river whispered, the forest leaves stirred, and the sun shone gently upon the village. Symbols of balance restored, karma acknowledged, and the enduring power of virtue triumphing over pride and cruelty. The village had changed. Where once whispers of shame lingered, now there was respect and quiet admiration. Kofi walked among the young men and women who gathered beneath the baobab trees, sharing seeds of wisdom and tales of patience. They listened closely, eyes wide, for Kofi's words carried the weight of experience, tempered by humility. Do not measure a man by the strength of his limbs alone, he told them, voice calm and steady. A heart that endures, a mind that observes, and hands that serve with respect, these are the true marks of greatness. Villagers nodded, murmuring agreement. Even the elders smiled faintly, their eyes reflecting pride and approval. Kofi had become more than a husband, more than a farmer who had suffered. He was now a guide, a moral compass for the village, a living testament that virtue, patience, and humility outshine arrogance and cruelty. Esi stood nearby, her hands folded in quiet dignity. The villagers approached her with smiles and gentle words of gratitude. You have been brave, one elder said. You spoke truth without fear and helped protect the honor of one who deserved it. Let all remember your courage. Esi's face flushed with modesty, but her heart swelled with the knowledge that even quiet loyalty could influence the tides of justice. She became a symbol of integrity, showing that courage need not be loud to be powerful. In the following days, the villagers gathered in small groups, sharing stories of the fall of pride and the rise of virtue. The elders reminded them, a house built on arrogance will crumble, but a heart rooted in patience and respect will endure. Children listened closely, repeating the lessons to one another, while mothers and fathers nodded, understanding the moral as more than words. It was the living law of the community. On a bright morning, the villagers assembled near the river. Its waters shimmered in the sunlight, reflecting the trees, the sky, and the renewed spirit of the community. Kofi and Esi knelt together, planting a young tree, its roots reaching into the fertile earth. May this tree grow strong as virtue grows in our hearts, Kofi said softly. The villagers watched, seeing in the act the promise of hope, the lesson that goodness, once planted, endures. The river whispered softly, and the forest leaves stirred in a gentle wind. It seemed to echo the rhythm of the village, a cycle of life, of lessons learned, of justice balanced. Nature itself reflected the restoration of harmony and moral order. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the river, a storyteller spoke to the gathered villagers. Remember, children of this land, Cruelty and pride invite their own downfall. Humility, patience, and virtue command respect, and the ancestors always watch. Let Kofi and Esi's deeds guide your hearts, and let your actions honor those who came before us. The villagers listened in silence, hearts full, knowing that life's lessons had been shown and that the balance between wrongdoing and justice had been restored. In the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle flow of the river, the moral of the tale lingered: life and virtue are intertwined, and true strength always lies within.